I might actually get this done today. Here's Connie's dog. I'm dog sitting. We're on the couch. It's almost 9 o'clock p.m. Wednesday, December 27, 2023. So Wednesday, 27 December 2023. I'm Tanis Coralee Leonhardi. This is my YouTube channel, Tanis Leonhardi. And I did it. I finished the book. Pages. So I'm trying out the 60 pages per YouTube reading notes video. So this is, I already did my video for pages 1 to 60, and I'm going to link to the playlist where that is, the book / reading notes playlist, instead of linking to the video. So yeah, kind of check that playlist out if you haven't, if you want to go find it, or you can find it a different way. That's one way of finding it. And so this is going to be covering the last 59 pages of the book. So let's get started. So I did my Who Am I wedding, focusing in on the who gets to take my virginity, my Jacob Ingebrigtsen or my Dominique Szoboszlai. So let's see, page 65. Oh, this was just a quote of a quote. Consider a plate of bacon and eggs. The chicken was involved, but the pig was committed. End quote. So like the chicken gave an egg, but didn't give its own meat, versus the pig gave its meat for the bacon. You know, the chicken gave the egg. I was like, okay, that's still, I still find that a weird comment or a quote. So I'm putting that out there. It's a reading note, right? And it's like, it's stuck with me every time I've read this. Okay. Let's see, next note, page 68. It says, remember, nobody sets out to damage reputation. So my Dominique Szoboszlai challenging my Jacob Ingebrigtsen for my virginity is not him setting out to damage the reputation of Jacob Ingebrigtsen. It's just him being like, but I want her virginity, to take her virginity. Okay? Don't worry, we get to the meat of the matter. Do we? Yeah. Okay, then page 73. They talk, and it's not the first time it's brought up in this, but they bring up reputation in regards to speed, and the things that can kind of damage a reputation. And they're talking about, like, sometimes competitors are faster, and sometimes there's like a deadline, or somebody needs something by a certain date, and something cannot be supplied. So I think that's a great point in thinking through my Jacob Ingebrigtsen and my Dominique Szoboszlai. If Jacob Ingebrigtsen and I are divinely determined he's going to be my first time, if that's let's say my wedding happens, and I move out of here. We're currently reside in my parents' house. I'm Tanis Coralee Leonhardi. It's my YouTube channel, Tanis Leonhardi. And in with my soulmate and her soulmates. And let's say as soon as possible is 6 years with Jacob Ingebrigtsen and 5.6 months with Dominique Szoboszlai. Does time matter in the or speed to my virginity being taken, that kind of thing? All right, so then there's one case for Dominique Szoboszlai, right, entering the one reason, right? And then I was thinking through, okay, well, what would the ideal be? The ideal would be retaining that divine order, predestination for Jacob Ingebrigtsen, in as soon as possible, right? Both as soon as possible and retaining order in that sense. And then, let's see, stakeholders. So that was page 73. Now going on to page 86. They talk about stakeholders, reputation, risk, that kind of stuff. And I was like, that's a great point. So if Jacob Ingebrigtsen takes my virginity in Hungary, and him and I are Norwegians, people go, but it's Hungary. It should be Dominique Szoboszlai. But I'm Norwegian. I'm not Hungarian, right? So there's, if one, when thinking of the frosty and hostile peoples from the notes for the first 60 pages today, in this reading, right? This might be a book that, for all I know, Dominique and I read 5 pages, start on 5 pages of notes videos every 5 days for every day we're moving, right? We could do a notes video if we have enough time, or so maybe after the first day with the proposal and stuff. But for this reading, We brought up the frosty and hostile peoples. Yeah, but we want to make Hungary. If I'm to live in Hungary, we want it to feel like home. So people being antagonistic towards Jacob Ingebrigtsen because he's Norwegian sets the wrong tone for me, right? Because I'm not Hungarian either. So at some point, like, stakeholders need to be taken into account, but there's also if they're going to be hostile to Jacob Ingebrigtsen, then maybe Jacob Ingebrigtsen and I shouldn't have my virginity taken, or he shouldn't take it in Hungary, right? Maybe a better fit would be like Scotland, right? In the Isle of Rosse, which I've brought up as a place I want to live, right? Especially if we're not living in the Isle of Rosse, that could be very romantic, right? He buys out an entire place and we have it all to ourselves, and he takes my virginity. And maybe the stakeholders, the owners of that business, and the people of Scotland want that more, right? That kind of thing. So in Hungary, Dominique Szoboszlai might be the obvious choice, and potentially it's the obvious choice to outsiders, right? Maybe Hungarians go, no, bring the Norwegians in, make them feel at home, we want them, right? Why is Dominique Szoboszlai entering the picture? We want babies, but we also want her, and we also want her Jacob. We want it all. We want all of her, kind of thing, which kind of fits for the Hungarian people. They seem to be very kind people. So yeah, there might be the Americans on the outside looking in, going like, it has to be Dominique Szoboszlai. He's Hungarian, because Americans tend to be a bit xenophobic, which means afraid of foreign people. But that does not necessarily mean it translates to a woman marrying a Hungarian. And I have no idea if I'm even a modicum Hungarian by ancestry, that kind of thing. Okay. And then it goes on page 91. It talks about public sector. So it goes into case studies, and it talks about public sector and private sector and how risk exposure can be different, and like reputation risk exposure can be different between private and public. I was like, well, that's also a thing, right? Jacob Ingebrigtsen and I, in a place all to ourselves in Scotland on the Isle of Rosse, that's private. Me and Dominique Szoboszlai in a locker room, that's private. Me and Jacob Ingebrigtsen on a track at a competition, that's public. So those are very different virginity loss scenarios, right? Different countries. And then there's always the Jacob Ingebrigtsen and I, he takes my virginity in our home country of Norway. I erred a little bit away from that because I have this feeling like we'd get stuck. Okay, in really big decisions in life, those feelings tend to be pretty right. So I was trying to do something that I think would be happy for everybody, including the people involved. Okay. And then, what was the last component that kind of stood out to me that I was like, yeah, it's something to think about is, well, I might not be notable enough for my own, like, spotlight pieces and press articles these days, but my soulmates sure are. So on page 99, they're talking about, like, newsworthiness and being covered by the press. I was like, yeah. Do I want it to be Jacob Ingebrigtsen, 2 Norwegian frikolas canoodle on a track publicly in Hungary? Do we want it to be, what's the spin angle from the press on each of these different scenarios? I think per my life experience, probably of the 3 I've kind of brought up, the Isle of Rosse with Jacob Ingebrigtsen. The 3 contenders, we'll say. The Isle of Rosse with Ingebrigtsen in Scotland. Public track at a competition in Hungary with Ingebrigtsen. And then in the locker room with Szoboszlai in Hungary. It's in Hungary for the competition. Of the 3, I would probably, my guess in thinking it through a little bit would be that the Isle of Rosse is the most stable against spin. So if newsworthiness matters, if none other than just like having built-in resiliency against spin by the press, Isle of Rosse with Ingebrigtsen would be the way to go. But yeah. So that's delving a little bit more into my virginity loss scenario in introducing the groom and my Jacob Ingebrigtsen, my divinely chosen, for my first consensual sweet loving, and Dominique Saboslight, divinely chosen. Should this, my who and my wedding come to be, and it's him, and it's my first wedding and all of that. Him being my divinely chosen to be my first to marry, are those two different things, or is it both end up being Dominique Saboslight? I thought about it, and I thought about it from a reputation risk, right? And it matters. And especially with the world we live in, and the prominent amount of damage the press can do to a person's mental health, if nothing else, right? We don't want to be put in a negative mental health by what the press says about us. So that does matter too. And it matters, but it does factor in, but it should not be the determining feature. We should find a way through. As soon as possible, being the mantra, and the right path through. But that's my state of where I am. For these notes, this is a short guide to reputation risk by Garry Honey. I'll put both information in the video description. And that's kind of it. The dog's tired. And we're gonna conclude there, sign off. Yeah. But happy day and time of viewing whenever you're viewing this, and happy place of viewing this wherever you're viewing this from.